Budget Talks with Raina and Meg.
Welcome to Budget Talks with Raina and Meg, where we make sense out of your dollars. So, Meg, I pay all these dues and I'm curious, where does my money go?
Well, Raina, there's a lot of places that your money goes, and it goes really far. We're pretty good at stretching those bucks here at CCFT. We're going to show a pie chart here that's going to give you a breakdown of the basic categories of our budget. I should note, though, that as we all know, we're in unprecedented times. I think I could live my whole life without hearing the word unprecedented again.
Yeah.
So this is a budget that is from our 1920 fiscal year, which was a slightly more normal year, which is going to give us a more general idea of our budget. So our budget will look a little bit different this year as we're in a distance education format. Because we're not spending money on things like conferences or meetings and food for those meetings and feeding everybody. We can't wait to get back to that. But for now, it looks a little bit different. But we're going to share what we think is most helpful, which is an average year for us, or give or take about average. So our biggest piece of the pie is our affiliation fees, and that makes up about 52% of our budget. So an affiliation fee is also called per capita dues. And these are the dues that we, CCFT, Cabrillo College Federation of Teachers, pays to CFT, the California Federation of Teachers, and AFT, the American Federation of Teachers. Those are our state and national parent organizations. And they do a lot of advocacy work that we just don't have the capacity to do on a local level. So advocating for legislation, for laws to be passed that really support teachers and education across the board. So those are really important for us. Our jobs rely, I think, more heavily than most on having supportive legislation at every level of government. So all the way from our local county bonds to state assembly bills to national laws. Those are all things that we really rely on to protect us. And our AFT and CFT affiliation fees help us to do that. So our next smallest piece of the pie here is 24%, and that goes to our contract employee. That's also known as our executive director. An executive director is a really important piece of the people of our union. It's somebody whose time is really dedicated in a big way to organizing the administration of union business, making sure that we have all of our ducks in a row and that we're advocating for the right things. They're really somebody who's in service the majority of their time to the members of our union. The pie is e-board units. So e-board units is our executive board. Our executive board makes up about 10% of our budget. Here are the units that they're paid. So our executive board does a lot of work for the union, from negotiating at the negotiating table with the district to the administration of union business, like, analyzing financial reports that I do in the treasurer job. You can talk a little bit, maybe, can you say what you do in your communications role in the executive board?
Absolutely. So as the communications director on our e-board, I work with everybody who's on the executive board and collaborate and help them consult about the different ways we can effectively communicate across our community, especially with our membership. So really, it's all about supporting the e-board's efforts to effectively and clearly and thoughtfully communicate among our community.
And we all know communication is key. It's a really important role. So the e-board units they range in size depending on role, and are split between some of us are using them as overload units, and some are using it as release time, particularly in the larger roles like president, where the majority of their time is spent really doing the work of the union for all of our members. So our next category is 8%. And that is other employees. So that's pretty vague, but that just means the folks that help us to run, I think, a lot of the administration. So that would be our accountant that helps us do a lot of the kind of complicated accounting to make sure that everybody is paying dues properly and not overpaying, and then that we're paying those affiliation fees that we referenced earlier to both our state and national parent organizations. Making sure all those bills get paid is very important. And then also clerical support for our executive director and president, as they have a lot on their to-do list.
Yes.
So let's see, what's next? Raina, we've got our 3% is meetings, food, and conferences.
Which is a little different right now.
It is. This one is probably the most different here in our COVID times, but meetings, food, and conferences is what it sounds like. So anytime we need to go to a conference to learn things or vote in, say the CCFT, sorry, the California Federation of Teachers, a statewide conference, to go and vote there, or hosting our Flex meeting that I hope everybody is familiar with. Hopefully those of you who are new get to experience that in person soon, but we feed everybody because we think it's really important to nourish our membership. So that is that piece of our pie, both literally and figuratively, for that one. So in the next three are all 1% of our budget. So just a tiny little slice. We've got necessary fees. Again, I know that's vague. That's just things like subscription services that we need for our website, for bill.com to pay our bills, just those kind of subscription fees that we pay to make sure everything runs right and that we have the tools to do what we need to do, especially like communicating to our membership. Legal fees is very important, even though it's a very small part of our budget. That is the fees we pay to our lawyer, that we pay a retainer fee to make sure that we have access to a lawyer whenever we need to defend our contract and support our members. This legal fees fluctuates every year depending on the needs of our membership. So if we need to really use a lot of our lawyers' time, that slice of the pie can grow, or if we don't have a need for it, it stays pretty stagnant at that 1%. And lastly, and maybe the most boring of our budget pie, is our office necessities. So that's things like paper and ink and those sorts of things to just make sure that we have what we need when we're getting all that work done.
Absolutely. Well, this is really helpful because looking back on our first episode talking about the Janus decision, this really shows how CCFT has made our dollars stretch because, the income coming in for CCFT has changed so drastically.
It really has. And I have to say that in going to trainings that are statewide trainings for, let's say, all of the treasurers for community college unions for CFT, I am really proud of the job that we've done in making sure our members' dollars are being stewarded well, and that we're making it stretch, like you said.
Well, thank you, Meg, for this incredibly in-depth and thoughtful explanation of where my money goes when I pay dues. That was really helpful.
Nothing more exciting than a budget. Thanks so much, Rita.
All right, Cabrillo College, stay classy.